ActionSA is warning that the recent ban on the movement of livestock could have a detrimental impact. This is to the South African industry. It says authorities attempt to stop the spread of foot and mouth disease. The party has also described a recent court ruling on the matter as impractical. The ActionSA Eastern Cape Chair, Athol Trollip, joins us tonight. Good evening, Mr. Trollip. Thanks for your time. Look, the Agricultural Department has made it clear why it believes there should be very limited movement when it comes to cattle and livestock during this time. But your own view on why this is not necessarily the right decision?
Good evening, Kathy. Yeah, thanks very much. I do believe when you have an outbreak of foot and mouth disease, you want to minimize any movement of cattle out of affected areas. And that's the traditional way of combating foot and mouth. But a blanket ban across the country is the problem as far as we're concerned, because one, how's it being policed? And two, is it being policed? And what will happen after 21 days? Those are the three main questions that I ask. Kathy, I travel extensively through the Eastern Cape, and I recently went to the Western Cape after the ban. I haven't encountered one roadblock anywhere. I've just traveled through the Transkei this afternoon, and I did not encounter one roadblock. I did see animals being transported on trucks, cattle, and there is a provision for slaughter stock to be transported on vehicles, and also stock for ritual slaughter. Once you open any kind of loophole where there's a blanket ban, then you are starting to dilute the efficacy of that ban. And our neighboring country, Botswana, has a very strong endemic prevalence of foot and mouth disease, and I recently saw a government gazette coming out of Botswana where they've identified an area where there's been an outbreak, and they have banned all movement of cattle and all cloven-hoofed animals, game, sheep, goats, cattle, to prevent the spread. And that is the most effective way. You identify an area where there's an outbreak, you isolate that area, you quarantine that area, you then pool all your resources together, state and private and commercial resources, and then you take whatever steps are necessary. Sometimes you have to euthanize animals. Sometimes you have to treat animals, and you hold them in a quarantine period until the outbreak is brought under control. But with a blanket ban, our already scarce resources like manpower in the South African police force, or police services, and also in the South African Defence Force, if you're not going to use those people and they're not available, you can't enforce the blanket ban. And the very big question is, if you ban it, it's not going to go away. Foot and mouth has been here for millennia on this continent. It doesn't go away by itself. It's got to be through direct intervention with state resources, state veterinarians, support services from the Department of Agriculture, get all the stakeholders together, the red meat producers organization and commercial farmers, and pool your resources and make sure there's an effective intervention. I don't see that happening in South Africa at the moment.
Is the difficulty not around the fact that it's been identified in several provinces? And I'm speaking here to your issue of, identifying specifically where the outbreak is. So already the fact that it's spread to a number of provinces suggests that there hasn't been a very good effort when it comes to completely preventing its further spread.
You're absolutely spot on. There's a red line in this country above which foot and mouth is endemic. And if you can contain livestock moving out of that area, you can prevent it spreading. But foot and mouth is quite an easily identifiable disease. And wherever there's an outbreak, one is supposed to quarantine a farm, quarantine a district, quarantine a region, and if necessary, quarantine a whole province. But to quarantine the whole country when you don't have any resources to manage that quarantine and to make sure that there is no movement of livestock, to me, is a bit like overreacting to our COVID-19 pandemic. The one thing you can't do is you can't make livestock wear masks. And the other thing is that livestock walk on their own. I mean, livestock walk from one farm to the other. They walk through our towns and cities every single day. Game moves over fences unhindered. So I just don't think there's been proper control and isolation of where this disease occurs. And that's why we're seeing this spreading. So I think it needs to be dealt with at source rather than having a blanket ban. Deal with it at source. Deal where there are outbreaks. Isolate those farms. Contain the outbreak. Treat it appropriately and to prevent the spread.
The DA agrees with the view that you have taken. In fact, they issued a statement a couple of weeks ago just on the same issue, criticizing this blanket ban. Is there likelihood that you're going to be working together on this matter to lobby the department?
Look, any organization that agrees with us, whether it's a producer organization, whether it's a stakeholder organization, I think that's good. I am a bit concerned that many of the stakeholder organizations, like the Red Meat Producers, National Wool Growers Association, farmers' unions, they don't have one coherent voice, and that makes them weak, actually. I think when you want to petition a minister that's made a bad decision, you want to try and get as many people as possible to speak with one voice. And this endeavor of ours is to say, look at our neighboring country. They're adopting a much more strategic strategy to control this disease, and we should be a lot more strategic rather than just having a blanket ban. Because, once there's a blanket ban, once you drive something underground, it's almost impossible to stop. We've seen it with prohibition. We've seen it with COVID, where people just didn't wear masks, didn't do their thing. Once there's a blanket ban, people will find a way to subvert it. But if you have a localized, area-specific ban, then all the police, all the state veterinarians, all the farmers associations, all the producer organizations know that no livestock is going to move out of an area until the disease has been brought under control. And I don't think enough of that's been done.
ActionSA Eastern Cape Chair Athol Trollip, we'll leave it there for tonight.